couple of minutes and then we will get started. Oh, my number 1 and 2 fans. Crystal, you're my number 1 fan, apparently, according to YouTube. Okay, 8 people. So I'm going to try this technology, and what I'm going to do is share my screen. And so I'm sure Crystal's going to let me know if that works. And I will just go through a bit of a presentation about red light therapy and what it is. And I'm going to be talking about the CERA system today. So I know maybe you can put in the chat whether you've got the system, whether you're familiar with the system, or whether you haven't seen it before. That would be useful. And I might even put the system on as I do this presentation, give myself a bit of extra brain power, but also you can ask me questions about this and how it operates. Okay, so we've got 10 people getting there. 10. Okay, let's see if I can operate technology. Hi, for anyone else joining, I've just seen another person join. Feel free to put your name and where you're from in the chat, just so that I can give you a shout out. And of course, this is all about Q&A. So if you can put your questions in the chat, we can get to them at the end. If there's anything you want to know, if you've used the device, we can talk about protocols, we can talk about applications. Okay, I am going to share a screen. So let's find out where the screen is. Okay. Sherry, you're researching on autism. Okay, hopefully we will get to that. Let me then, hopefully now you can see my slide. And I'll just check in that that's working. Okay, slideshow. So just to give you, I can't see you now and I can't see your chat. So I'm just going to quickly go through my slideshow as I can see it on the screen here. I'm going to be quite quick because I want to make sure that we've got as much time as possible for questions. So let me just start to go through a very brief discussion about red light therapy in general, why we're using it for gut-brain connection, and then in particular, I'm going to talk about this device that I'm wearing, which is the CERA System, which is a brain red light device that you can see I have on, and also the body panel. So let's just get to it. I have Crystal on a different device, so if there's anything that I need to be aware of, she's going to shout out to me. Otherwise, we'll do questions at the end. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of people who have joined this webinar know about red light therapy, but the main way that red light therapy works in the body is it targets the mitochondria, which are the organelles inside our cells. We have millions of these organelles. We have most of them where we need to do a lot of energetic work. So in the brain, in the gut, and in the big muscles. So light is received particularly by the mitochondria. And this is why red light therapy has such a wide range of applications, because you're actually charging the part of the body where you're making energy. So you're giving energy to the body in a very real and tangible way, and you're doing it directly with the device in the area of application. And you also have a systemic effect of red light therapy, which is why we do 2 systems together. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So here we have a cell, and here we have the mitochondria. So here we've only got 3 mitochondria in the cell, but in actual fact, there are a lot of mitochondria in each cell. So as I said, the main way that light is having an effect is that it stimulates a particular enzyme inside the mitochondria, and that causes the release of ATP, which is the body's energy currency. So the upshot of that is that you have a lot more energy available to the system. And this is both locally and as a body-wide. You have a huge uptick in ATP that's available for the body generally. You also have a release of what is known as reactive oxygen species, and that's just cell signaling chemicals. And this is how we turn on body's healing programs. So this is very, very interesting and very useful for the brain function we're going to talk about. And we also have a little release, a transient release of nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide is a gas. It's transiently released when you have this effect of light on the cell, and it has an effect to open blood vessels. So you have this three-pronged effect of a lot more energy, cell signaling to initiate healing mechanisms, and greater blood flow to the area. And when you have greater blood flow, you have more oxygen and the removal of waste products. So this is one of the main ways that red light therapy is affecting the body. And I think you can see from this that this all has the greatest effect on our body's innate healing. And this is why it's a range of applications, because almost every chronic illness has a commonality, which is a lack of energy, a lack of oxygenated blood, and an inability to remove toxins. So why have I targeted the gut and brain? Well, my background is neuroscience, and so really I'm all about the brain. I think if you have a good brain, everything else you can deal with. So red light therapy has been shown to be very effective for all different kinds of brain optimization. Actually, when you combine it with gut, targeting the gut at the same time, you have an increased and synergistic effect. And I'm going to go into the reasons for that. But mainly, the body is an interconnected system, and the gut and brain in particular are very intrinsically linked. We have a very real connection between the gut and the brain with the vagus nerve, but also the gut and the brain are connected via the blood, via the hormone system, via the endocrine system. There are all kinds of messages that are going from your bacteria into your blood and to your brain. It's a biodirectional communication highway. You also have a lot of information going from your brain to your gut. Actually, not as much, interestingly enough. Most of the information is traveling from your gut to your brain, telling your brain about what's going on in the environment. The gut also has a lot of neural tissue and produces a lot of neurotransmitters. So if you're really trying to focus on having a good brain, you need to have a good gut. And if you have issues with your gut now, you need to get them in check before they lead to issues with brain further down the line. So that's why for this particular dual device system, we look to target the gut and the brain at the same time. And we use light therapy to do that. Very, very simple technology. And I'm going to explain to you how that works. So one of the main questions that's asked when we're talking about red light therapy is wavelength. Now, wavelength just equates to the color of the light. So red and near infrared light are different wavelengths of light. That's how we can best describe them. So we're talking about red light. So we're talking about light within this band that covers red light that you can see, visible red, and red a little bit further down into the near infrared range. So it's not so long wavelength that it's experienced as heat, like a near infrared sauna. This is shorter wavelength. And the ones that are most commonly used are 630 in the red and 850 in the near infrared. And that's because that's where the mitochondria absorb the most light. Actually, the 650, the visible red, won't go so deep into the body. So most brain devices will use 850 as the dominant wavelength. But also there are indications in the research that 940 and 1070 nanometers also have a therapeutic effect. So in the CERA headband, we use the visible red because we want to target the skin and the blood. But to get into the brain, we use the 850, 940, and 1070 nanometer. And so that we're getting all of those different light receivers, in this particular system, we use 4 wavelengths. So that's different to most red light therapy devices you'll see, where people tend to stick to 1 or 2 wavelengths of light. The CERA system, we're actually using 4, and we're using the ones you can see here, 630, 850, 940, and 1070 nanometers. And so another very, very common question that we get is, should the light be pulsed? Now, I'm sure if you've looked into red light therapy, you may have seen that some people use what's called continuous wave. That's a light source that's constantly on. And some people use a pulsing light device. And usually the pulsing is matching a brainwave frequency. So whether or not the pulsing has an effect to make the light go deeper into the body, which is possible because you're having this kind of pushing effect of the light. I actually think the main effect of pulsing a light therapy is in training brainwave frequencies. So I always say, if you want to use a pulsed light source, then use it to have some kind of neuromodulatory effect. And that's exactly what we do with this particular device. So the pulsing here in these instances is really just turning the light source off and on at different frequencies per second. So the Hertz frequency is a per second frequency. So we have 7.8, which is a low alpha or a Schumann frequency, or even in that theta range, an alpha pulsing, a gamma pulsing. We also have a high gamma, which has been shown in altered states in consciousness. And we have two programs that are using that continuous wave. So when you would get your CERA system, you would go through these different programs and use the pulsing depending on what you're trying to do. So we have lots of literature that suggests that a 40 hertz gamma pulsing frequency is good for neurodegeneration. As a rule of thumb, the slower pulse modes help you get into a more relaxed state. The higher ones help you get more motivated and help with performance. So we would guide you through which of these pulse frequencies to use. But to answer that question, should you use pulse light? Yes, you can use pulsed frequencies to have an additional effect to the light therapy. So in effect, by using pulsing, you're getting neuromodulation as well as the photobiomodulation. So this is another very frequently asked question that we have about this particular system, is how is it different? Because there are a lot of devices on the market that are a lot cheaper. There are a lot of like handheld lights or panels, different kinds of devices. And there are a lot of other devices, helmets and things that are much more expensive. So how does the CERA system fit in, and how do you know how much you need to invest on any of these light therapy devices? So just to be clear, what we have with the CERA system is two devices. So we have a headband and a body panel, and we have the app. And the app is like a device to itself because the app also has different meditations, different breathing schedules, ambient music. We also have hypnosis tracks. We have different things on there that allow you to listen to pulsed frequencies as well as having the light frequency. So you're actually getting three devices here, and all of these devices are low to mid-range output, which is what you need for a brain health device. And you can see they fit flush to the body, and they're ergonomically designed to be used for a specific function. So yes, you could potentially buy a handheld and kind of try and push it against your head, but that's not how it's been designed. And actually, it's much better to have a device that fits flush to the head, that has contact points for the left and right frontal cortex and the midline, and one at the back for the cerebellum, and a body panel that you can have comfortably on, that's going to actually contour to the body and fit nicely. So that's why you have this price that is appropriate for these three devices that are specific for the gut-brain connection. With regards to the more expensive units, some of the helmets and things, you're just paying for the development costs there. These things do cost a lot to develop. At CeraThrive, we actually partner with the manufacturer, so we're able to keep the costs a little bit lower compared to some of the other helmet style brain devices. So that's why you see this range of prices, going from very, very cheap, you can buy it on Amazon, but it's not going to have an effect on the brain, doesn't have the pulsing, it's not designed to be comfortable, you don't really know what wavelength, to the very expensive devices where you're having there to pay for that quite expensive development cost. With regards to power output, we're deliberately on the low to mid range of the power because we're right bang in what is recommended according to the literature to have an effect on the gut and the brain. This is another a question that people ask because, of course, you want to know if you buy a system like this, how often do you need to use it? And the other related question is when do I see an effect? So the answer really is consistency. You need to use these devices, any red light therapy device that you buy, you need to use it consistently. I think it's a little bit like exercise. You're going to see a good effect of going to the gym if you go consistently. If you go once a week for a year, you're definitely going to see an improvement. If you go twice a week, you may see the improvement a little bit quicker. 3 times, a little bit quicker. So really, you want to use the device as much as you can, maybe 4 to 5 times a week, if possible. But more important than that is consistency. So if you only use the device once a week, but you use it every single week, you're going to have a better effect than if you used it, 5 times a week for the first 3 weeks and then stuffed it under your bed. That's not how you get result. So for any of these devices, including the CERA system, you need to use these devices on a consistent basis, and it's a cumulative effect. The more you use the devices, the more your body will develop light receivers, the more benefit that you'll get from these systems. So people tend to see a little bit of a slow uptake on how they use the device. Maybe they don't see an effect for 1 month, maybe 2 months, but soon enough, the body starts to get used to the light therapy. The body starts to produce more of these mitochondria. You start to have mitochondria migrate to the place where you need them. Then you start to see an acceleration of the efficacy of the treatment. So how to use is very simple. You just wear the devices. You have one on the head, one on the gut. You select the relevant program, and we've talked about which pulsing might work for you. 10 to 20 minutes. We usually suggest starting with 10 minutes and building up because, again, it's a bit like exercise. You don't go straight in for the heavy weights right away. You need to let your body adapt. So 10-minute session, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and building up to maybe 20 minutes is a good way to do it. And then do it consistently. Gut issues we normally see respond quicker than brain issues. And again, this is interesting to us because it suggests that there is kind of a hierarchy in the way the body heals. But gut issues, you probably would see results within a few weeks, and then brain issues, people tend to see a good effect after about 6 weeks of use. So we did have a few questions that came in response to our mail out. So I'm just going to go through some of these questions. I haven't put them all on here, but after I've done this, I'm going to switch back to YouTube. And I think the best way is for me to just answer your questions as they come in. So this was a question from Anne, and she was asking about intestinal overgrowth, because of course we're dealing with the gut. And what we want to know is, are we going to have an effect on some of these things, like SIBO, for example, or other kinds of overgrowth in the gut? And what I will say with this is, you are indirectly. The light that we're using is near infrared. It's a very therapeutic wavelength of light, but it definitely is not going to kill bacteria. If you want to have an effect killing bacteria, then you need to use UV light and blue light, and people do use that on the skin, but because that doesn't penetrate very deep in the body, that's not going to work on the gut. So what we're doing with red light therapy, instead of having an effect on harmful bacteria in the body, we're providing the body with a good environment in the gut that the good bacteria survive. So we're giving mitochondrial support. We're also reducing inflammation in the body. So reduction of inflammation is hugely helpful globally in the body, but it also helps to heal the gut, and it helps with immune responses and gut mobility. And this often is what's going on when you have these overgrowths, is that you have this huge systemic inflammation that you need to calm down before you get anywhere. And we're also potentially affecting vagal tone. And again, this is hugely important for these kinds of things. So you're not directly affecting the bacteria, is my answer to this. You're making a good environment. You're helping seal those gap junctions in the gut so that you're not getting waste products of all this bacteria into your bloodstream and causing systemic inflammation. You're healing the leaky gut. You're making a good environment inside your gut, and then you get the good bacteria. And actually, if you look at the research, especially animal studies, you can see that you can go from a deleterious bacterial profile to a more normalized bacterial profile just by using red light therapy to the abdomen area. So it's very promising, but we're not directly affecting bacterial overgrowth in the gut. This is another question from Ivana. And she was asking about the strength of the diodes and the grade of the therapy device, whether it's a grade 3 or 4. So this is a good segue to talk about LED versus laser. So what we're using in a lot of these devices, and almost all brain red light therapy devices, use LED. We don't use laser anymore. We used to use laser when this therapy first started, but really since the 80s and the advent of LEDs, which are light emitting diodes, we don't need to use lasers. Lasers are not so easy to use. They're not as safe. You do have to have special training for them. So when you're referring to 3 or 4, that's really what you're talking about, these very clinical devices that are not home use devices. So LEDs are much safer. They require less training. They can be used at home. They're particularly useful for things like brain conditions where you want that incoherent beam of light. You don't want to have that kind of pinpoint laser beam type light when you're looking at the brain. We've found that actually a diffuse light source is much better. So the CERA system is a low to mid power output LED device. So we're not talking about grade 1 or 4. And I think Ivana's question was also about training for red light therapy devices. Obviously, laser needs a bit more training and you have to do it within a clinic. LED devices, you don't need to have medical training to use them, and they're actually have a really good safety profile with no known documented side effects. So from a point of view of safety, ease of use, training, usefulness in a clinic, LED devices are really very, very good and also very, very efficacious. Okay, this is a question from Crystal. Does irradiance affect the results? So just to be clear, irradiance is the power output, and it's usually expressed as milliwatts per centimeter squared. So there is a little bit of contention in the photobiomodulation world because it's fairly difficult to measure the light output. At the moment, we don't have standardized ways of doing this. It really depends on making sure that you're measuring all the light sources, and if you have double stacking LEDs, that you're blocking out all of the different wavelengths to make sure you're getting a clear measurement. In the literature, the research shows around about between 5 and 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared is a good therapeutic dose. CERA System uses mid-range, which is 25 milliwatts. So we think this is a sweet spot. It's a little bit more on the lower end because we are putting this light on the brain and we want to have a gentle stimulation. The way that I would tackle anyone who thinks this is slightly low powered is it's better to have a lower power device that you could use for a longer time than to have a high power device that's potentially giving the cells more energy than they can deal with at one time. So irradiance does affect results. You want to have something which is low to mid range, somewhere between, potentially 10 milliwatts per centimeter squared up to 50 to 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared. And again, the only way you know this is if you read this, the manufacturer or the supplier should have all this information for you. Any good product will tell you all of these figures, so you can kind of look that up. This is from Kuna, I think, or Suna. How does red light therapy help with cognitive decline? And this is an interesting question, because of course we talk a lot, we are a wellness product, so we talk about cognitive enhancement, but sometimes I think it's difficult for people to wrap their head around how actually just shining light onto the brain can help with some of these incurable transient conditions. The main thing is, as I've said before, is that we're stimulating the mitochondria. When the cell, and the brain in particular, has a lot of energy, then it can do a lot more. And that means more energy in the brain and greater neural function, and potentially synaptogenesis and neurogenesis. Very interesting studies showing this, particularly in animal models. Also, you have a lot more blood flow. You're reducing neuroinflammation. So that's just the inflammation specifically in the brain. And you help with all kinds of growth factors in the brain. And again, this is coming direct from research data. We now know that you have these factors and things that are stimulated in response to this kind of near infrared light that is on the cortex of the brain when you're using these devices. Another interesting way that red light therapy may help with cognition is it helps to clear out the brain when we sleep. And we have this kind of flushing mechanism in the brain. It's called the glymphatic system. It's like the lymphatic system in the body, but in the brain we call it the glymphatic system. When you stimulate this glymphatic system, and this is particularly active during night, during deep sleep, which is why sleep is so important, but that helps to clear out waste, anything like misfolded proteins and the amyloid beta, stuff that may cause us to have cognitive issues in our waking time. So glymphatic support and glymphatic drainage are a hugely important way that light therapy helps with cognitive decline. And also, of course, we're targeting gut inflammation at the same time. So if you reduce that systemic inflammation in the body, you're also reducing neuroinflammation. So having a lot less inflammation in the body generally will really help with cognitive processes and all kinds of things, not just cognitive decline, but going from the baseline of where you're at with your cognition to better. So that's the echo back, because I couldn't see your questions and now I can see them all, which is great. So I can see that you're having a chat in there. Seb, thank you for jumping in. That's fabulous. So let me see if there are any questions that didn't get answered. If you want to put them straight in the chat now, because I might get lost in the thread. But if you have any pressing questions that I can answer for you now, I would be very happy to do it. I can see someone there is talking about gluten intolerance and celiac disease. Again, the way that the device is working is that you're putting near infrared light into the body, and the body receives that light. And where you have anything, where you have like a small wound or anything that needs healing, and actually a lot of these diseases in the gut are caused by the gap junctions not fitting tightly enough. You can actually cause these gap junctions to tighten, and then you don't get waste products leaking into the blood and causing inflammation. So a lot of the stuff with gluten intolerance, for example, is the gluten exacerbates this leaky gut. So if you're able to heal the leaky gut, so that you can actually digest the food you're eating, including things like gluten, a lot of people find that that does clear up over time. Celiac is slightly different because celiac is a specific allergy, but a lot of people find that they can certainly reduce the symptoms of celiac disease by just reducing that inflammation in the body. So we're not directly saying we're having an effect on celiac. What we're saying is we're helping you to heal your gut so that you don't have such bad symptoms from having particles of food or inflammation coming out in your gut. So that's that one. Hi, Robert from Alberta. Susan, Chantel, hi Chantel. Kuna, I hope I answered your question correctly. I don't have any more chats, any more questions, but if you have any more, please post them through now, or Crystal, maybe you can Slack them to me if I'm not getting them on here. Let me stop sharing this so you can see me. Autism research, says Sherry. Yes. So we do know that that red light therapy is safe for children. So that is a great way that we can start to investigate whether we can use this for autism. Actually, we do have an autism study ongoing at the moment. It's just started. So I don't have a great deal of research personally on CeraThrive, but I will say that there is devices that are out there that are currently being used very effectively for autism. And so we can show equivalence to those devices, because most of the devices, as I said, are using those main wavelengths. So I do know that one of the devices that they're now using in an autism study that's about to be published is that 850 nanometers, which we have in our device. In addition, autism has a big gut component, and I'm sure you know that if you're kind of investigating it. But this whole thing about the connection between autism and maybe having acetaldehydes build up in the gut, or having a different way that the body is metabolizing food in the gut that causes people to have more cognitive systems in autism, it is a big part of it. So we're hoping that with the gut panel in conjunction with the headband, that this device will be very useful for people who are dealing with autism. Crystal says that her son is part of that study. Yeah, that's great. I mean, this is the way we're going to find out, is to keep doing these studies. I actually think perhaps that autism will be one of the things where the FDA approves it first, because at the moment the results are so compelling. Harry, wave, can you? Am I meant to wave at Harry? Maybe he needs to finish that sentence. Crystal, oh, can your machine help maintain hair growth, says Harry. Actually, the devices that are used for hair growth are usually placed over the hair. And they are red light because you're focusing just on the hair follicles. So we're not particularly aiming at hair growth. With this particular device. It's not a hair growth device. We're aiming at gut and brain function. Obviously, what you're going to do is increase your general wellness, because you're targeting the mitochondria, you're targeting how your metabolism and your general homeostasis. But Henry, it's not particularly a hair growth device. I will say that I think most people who use the device regularly do see an improvement in hair and nails and everything else. But no, this is not designed as a hair growth device. Sherry says study is at Austin. Okay, so your son is an adult now at 25. No, the study we're doing is actually in conjunction with a medical doctor in Dubai. But I'm sure if there's a study going on in Austin, that's also using a very similar wavelength. Yeah, it will be very interesting. And thanks to your son for taking part in that study. But yeah, there are a lot of different research groups now who are doing very important research into red light therapy. And it just raises the profile of everybody. If you want to do 20 minutes of the program, can you just do a 10-minute? Oh, I see. So at the moment, the devices are programmed to be a 10-minute session. And the reason is that is one therapeutic dose. So we normally recommend that people would do their 10 minutes and then maybe do another 10 minutes at another time. So we don't have the facility to do a whole 20-minute program. But in most cases, especially if you program the device just by pressing the button on the top, it's pretty simple just to press the button again, and then you get the energize function repeat straight away. So I would recommend doing that. If you're doing your 10 minutes, I would push the button again, and then you get another 10 minutes straight away. Seb is asking about anxiety. So yes, one of the ways that the light therapy is working is that because we're targeting the mitochondria, we can use it to provide energy to the body, and we can also pulse at a lower frequency, which I think I mentioned. So if we use the alpha frequency, getting the brain to kind of come down into that lower pulse mode is often very useful for people who are highly strung, who are feeling anxious or feeling stressed. So we would combine the body panel as always, and then we would use the light panel using that alpha frequency, or maybe even using that lower 7.8 Schumann frequency to help people with anxiety and stress. So that's one of the main one. Ivana says, can you use this in a clinical setting for clients? Yes, we do have a lot of clinics. Actually, we have a lot more clinics than we thought. Initially, we thought this was just going to be a home use device, but we are finding that clinics are taking on this device because it's something that can be done maybe in conjunction with other treatments. We have clinics that are maybe using hypnosis, or maybe we have spas that are also doing IVs. You can stack this with a lot of different modalities, specifically things like autism, where there's a medical doctor involved. People are also using it for very bespoke reasons. But yes, you can use in a clinic. We also have silicon body panels so that you can use it multiple times. The good thing about the battery operation is that one battery charge lasts for 10 sessions. So if you've got it in a clinic session, you can charge the device overnight and then you have a whole day's worth of use. You can charge separately for the sessions or have it as an add-on, or if you're working in some kind of longevity clinic, have it as a perk. So we are finding more and more clinics, which is very gratifying and very interesting. And we can probably do a whole webinar where we just talk about clinical use, how to use it in a clinic, and the things that go with that. SJM said, when you mentioned increased light receivers, what do you mean? So what I mean by light receivers is, in order for light to be used by the body, it has to be taken on by some biological structure, and then have that light energy be turned into something useful for the body. So the most common light receiver in the body is this little enzyme inside the mitochondria called cytochrome C oxidase. That's the most common light receiver that we have in the body. But really anything that becomes energized when it's stimulated by light is a light receiver. So water is also a light receiver. So if you shine light onto water, you change the structure of water, you slightly change its function and the way it works. It is able to work more optimally inside the body. So that's a light receiver. Anything that really has an aromatic ring structure, any molecule, will potentially be a light receiver. And we know that there are other light receivers in the blood. Heme, for example, which is the part in red blood. Heme is a molecule that has this specific structure that will resonate with light. So anything that has that kind of structure is a light receiver. The main one is inside the mitochondria. That's why we talk about the mitochondria so much. The mitochondria is the main source of the light receiver in the body, and it's cytochrome C oxidase. Right, I think I've got one or two more questions because we're coming to the end, but we will be saving this chat. Of course, if you have additional questions, you can message us at info@CeraThrive. We always answer all of your questions. We'll be very happy to get on a call if you have any questions about any of the things that I've spoken about. Seb said, do you have a discount on the product? Yes, anybody who's attended this webinar will be sending you out a discount code straight away. So that will be sent to you, and that will be available, I think, for a few weeks after this webinar. So that will be cool. Crystal said it has helped her clients suffering with PTSD. SJM, what goes into choosing which diodes light up with each mode? Some use all, some a few, and some only one. Yes, each of the modes has a specific application. So whether you're looking to calm down, or whether you're looking to motivate someone, or brain performance, or you're looking at changing anxiety levels, each of the 6 programs is based on current research. So what I've done is I've taken all the research, I've done a whole meta analysis of that research. And if for some reason that particular data only shows it went in through the frontal cortex, then I've limited the light to the frontal cortex. Because as much as possible, I want the CERA system to be based on published data. So all of the programs are based on published data. In some cases, we're looking at the whole frontal cortex. In some cases, we also include the cerebellum. Some cases, we just use the left and right hemispheres. So you will see on some of the programs, some of the clusters light up. Also, for some things, we really want to put all of the light straight into this front part. We're not so worried about light going in the back. So each of the programs is designed to have a specific function, and you can find all that information in the manual. Okay, I think we're coming to the end. Crystal has kindly put up the contact details, which if you have any other questions, it's just info@CeraThrive.com. We're always here to answer any of these questions. You will be mailed this presentation so that you have a copy of it. You will be mailed a discount code. And if there's anything else that myself or the team can help with, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And thank you for joining. Thank you. It's a shame I can't see your lovely faces, but I got some good energy through the chat there. So thank you for that. And thank you for all those very considered questions. It really is a pleasure to answer them because we're so excited about presenting this therapy and what it can do. I think in another webinar, we will invite people on as case studies so that people can also see how people have really integrated it and the results that they've had, because we really have some very, very powerful testimonials that I'd like to share with you also. So I would just say a heartfelt thank you for joining me today, and have a lovely evening stroke rest of your day, and we'll look forward to speaking to you again soon, I hope. Take care. Bye-bye.